Hi, I'm Frederick Regenold. One of the 8 books I've written has a novella and 7 short stories. The title is That Note From La Jolla. The short story I'm about to read for you, which is from that book, is called Isadore Reingold's Zenith. And just in case you don't know, a zenith is the highest point or climax of something. This short story is about one of the highest points in the life of Isadore Reingold. I was able to write this story with a great deal of authority because everything that happens in this story to Izzy actually happened to me after I had graduated from the Pasadena Playhouse, where I won a scholarship and graduated with honors. The photo you see on the thumbnail cover is me when I was a student at the Playhouse. The only names that are fictitious in this story are Isadore Reingold and his wife Lily. I'm Izzy, and my first wife, whose name was not Lily, actually worked as a secretary at Peter Satore's Rolls-Royce dealership in Pasadena, and we lived in an efficiency apartment with a pull-down bed, as in the story. Why do I use the name Izzy in the story? Well, it's sort of a private joke I used as a student at the Playhouse. When I was there from 1957 to 1959, I had a feeling that Hollywood was controlled by Jews. My name is very German. I used to kid around with my classmates that after I graduated, I was going to change my name to Isadore Reingold, but they could call me Izzy. My joke, of course, was ridiculous because 2 very well-known Jewish actors, Kirk Douglas and Tony Curtis, both had very Jewish names originally and changed them, just the opposite of what I joked about doing. Thought you might like to know that. I'll read my short story now. Pasadena, California, September 1959. The main stage of the Pasadena Playhouse is in a theater that seats approximately 700. It was a Monday night, and they were having tryouts for a Norman Krasna comedy, Who Is That Lady I Saw You With? It had been on Broadway, and a recent movie was made with Tony Curtis, Janet Leigh, and Dean Martin. Isadore Reingold had won a scholarship at the Playhouse and had recently graduated with honors. He read about the tryouts in the local Pasadena newspaper, and since he had seen the movie and thought it was fun, he decided to go to the tryouts and maybe read for one of the parts. It was being directed by one of the faculty members for whom he had performed and also admired, so he wouldn't be totally unknown. Although the chance of him playing one of the leads was out of the question, he still read because he knew it was a good experience. He read for a couple of other parts also. 2 of his classmates were also there, Paul B. Price and Walter Altsman, who was from Germany. The assistant director had been a classmate of Izzy's and had directed Reingold in the role of Merrick in the Caine Mutiny Court-Martial. During the tryouts, the assistant director approached Isadore and asked if he could talk with him for a minute. They went to the back of the audience area and sat in the darkness. All the students called Isadore by his nickname, Izzy, and that's what the assistant director called him. Izzy, the three main leads, the two men and the female, have already been picked. But I have something you might be interested in. All I ask is, if you're not seriously interested, please tell me and I'll understand. I have to be able to count on you if things happen and we need you. I know if you tell me you'll do it, there won't be any problem, okay? Yeah, I understand, David. What's the deal? Well, the guy who's playing Michael Haney, the part Dean Martin played in the movie and Ray Walston played on Broadway, reportedly has a drinking problem. This is something we cannot mention to anyone else. That goes for Paul and Walter if they're in the show, or anyone else. You'll probably have to tell your wife, but make sure she doesn't tell anyone where she works or otherwise. This is top secret, and if the word got out, it could cause problems. He paused to make sure his remarks had sunk in. So, we'd like for you to play one of the FBI men, a small part, but we'd like for you to learn the Michael Haney part and be able to take it over if this actor has a problem. He put his hand out, palm forward, indicating stoppage. It may never happen, and of course, that would mean a lot of your work would be for nothing. However, the information we have is from a pretty good source. He was struggling to come up with his words. I really don't know if it can be done. I mean, you're going to have to learn not only his lines, but also some tricky business he does, and his blocking. Maybe we're asking you to do something that's impossible. But I know after being your classmate and directing you in a play myself, that if anyone can do it, it's you. Well, thank you, David. I appreciate your confidence in me. You'll be able to watch a lot of it from out front because you're not in that many scenes as the FBI man. But sometimes you'll have to watch from the wings, from behind the curtains. And other members of the cast will be wondering, what the hell you're doing? It might require a little deception on your part. He smiled. What do you think? You want to try it? I like the challenge. If nothing else, it'll be good for me. An experience I can build on. Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do my best. That's what David wanted to hear. He knew if Izzy said he'd do his best, that few people could do better. That's great. I'll let Mr. Shoup know. When Izzy went to his apartment and told his wife, Lily, she was not very enthusiastic. Sounds like a lot of waste of time to me. She was a realistic person. I've heard of actors doing it and nothing ever happens. Wouldn't it be better for you to look for a job? Yeah, I know. It's a big gamble, but they're showing their confidence in me, and this is the first thing I've done since graduation. I realize you've been supporting us all this time, but this is something good for my resume. And you never know, destiny might be on my side. Well, destiny's fine, Izzy, but we have to make car payments, pay the rent, and eat. She flipped her palms upward. Okay, if you really want to do it, it's fine with me. She gave him an approval kiss. Is it a large role? We saw the movie, the part Dean Martin played. Yeah, it's one of three main characters. It isn't by any means a simple part. From an actor's standpoint, it's the best role in the play. The rehearsal period, which wiped out September, was a very strange and different experience for Izzy. His classmate, Paul B. Price, got the part of the Chinese restaurant owner, and the student from Germany, Walter Altman, plays a secret foreign agent. Izzy had to do some convincing acting all during the rehearsal as a lackadaisical actor who was playing a very small part in the production, but who was simply interested in watching the other actors perform. At the same time, he had to watch every move the actor who played Michael Haney made and mentally record them. Then, during the day, alone in his apartment, he'd work on Michael Haney's dialogue, imagining himself on the stage with the other actors. At night, after going to his apartment following rehearsal, he'd go through the entire play in his mind, speaking Haney's dialogue aloud, walking through the character's blocking, and the physical moves that character makes on stage, as designed by the play's director. His wife was not too happy about that. Then, before falling asleep, he'd again go through the whole play, making an effort to only whisper the dialogue. His wife learned it was best to wait until after he finished before getting into the pull-down bed with him and trying to go to sleep. She found herself looking forward to only one date, the last performance of Who Was That Lady? She had to go to the Rolls-Royce dealer and perform as a secretary each day. Paul B. Price and Izzy shared the same dressing room, so it was impossible for Price not to know something weird was going on with Izzy. Price had to put on Chinese makeup when he got into dress rehearsals, and he started asking questions that Izzy could not avoid. Izzy had to tell him, and emphasize the importance of keeping it confidential, in particular with Altman. Price understood and lived up to the deal. By the time opening night arrived, Izzy was able to tell his wife, Price, and David, the assistant manager, that he had the part down pat, including the dialogue blocking and his character's business. Some of the character's business was crucial. For example, when Haney quickly removes the shoe and sock from one foot and shows the other male lead character a tattoo on the bottom of his foot that identifies him as an operative of the CIA. Opening night was exciting, even for Izzy with his small part. He had never been backstage for a performance in the main theater of the Pasadena Playhouse, although he did play the Kubla Khan in a Christmas student musical production of Three Ponies to Peking. Except for a short appearance on the stage in the small FBI part, he was able to watch most of the entire show from the wings, taking every precaution to prevent other cast members from seeing him. There was a full house, and the audience thoroughly enjoyed the show with lots of laughter. The play had 2 acts and 13 scene changes, and Izzy had to pay attention to the technical cues in case he had to take over the role. Following the performance, there were quite a few of the audience in the green room to congratulate the cast. The most famous was Charlton Heston, who was with his wife. Izzy was curious about which cast member they knew. It was the actor he was secretly understudying. Izzy watched with understandable misgivings. as the couple gave their friend kudos. There was an instant in which Izzy wished he could push a button and disappear, but he momentarily bounced back into reality, the reality that told him he'd agreed to do a job and he had to do it. During the next 3 weeks, Izzy also accepted the reality he would probably never perform the Haney character in this production. There wasn't the slightest sign of any drinking problem by that actor. This didn't keep Izzy from persevering. He actually gained more and more confidence about the role because of his perseverance. In fact, he began to spot nuances he'd missed, and in some cases, he made a mental note of how he would do or say something differently, cautioning himself not to deviate noticeably from what he knew the director wanted. They were small touches he believed would make the character more three-dimensional, something for which as a student he had received many compliments from faculty instructors at the Playhouse. The night of Friday, October 23rd, somehow suddenly came up from nowhere, and it turned out to be pivotal. It would be a night Isadore Reingold would take with him to his grave, unless he was cremated. It was a packed house, as most were, and Friday and Saturday nights in general seemed more upbeat. The audiences on those nights came across as more receptive. There was a brief delay at the opening curtain, something to do with the actor who played the Haney role. He was maybe 3 minutes late, and of course, being 1 minute late for a performance was a definite no-no in the theater world. He also was visibly inebriated. In a few moments, the word got around that he'd gone to Tijuana, Mexico, just across the border, and had a bit too many margaritas, considering he would be performing a major role in the theatrical production a few hours later. He insisted, however, that he was perfectly able to portray his character on stage, and he lived up to his promise. But his condition was obvious to the cast and the audience and to the director. When the final curtain came down and the last curtain call was taken, there was what you might call an audible silence backstage, filled with whispers. Izzy took his time removing makeup and changing his clothes. Paul Price had to remove his Chinese makeup, but took longer than usual. All of the cast was wondering what would happen now. The ones who had scenes with the Haney character were justifiably uneasy, not sure if the tipsy actor would utter his lines correctly and do what he was supposed to do. However, they all liked the actor. He was a friendly, easygoing man who was fun to work with. They were disappointed in his behavior. It was unprofessional. But because of their fondness for him, they hoped he could survive the incident unscathed, but perhaps with a deservedly stern admonition. David, the assistant director, stuck his head in Izzy's dressing room, saw that Paul was still there, and told Izzy he needed to talk to him. Izzy was dressed and followed him to a relatively private corner of the green room. "Are you ready to perform the role, Izzy?" David's face reflected concern. "I'm ready. I know the part." Izzy's tone of voice was steady and sure. "We're going to have a meeting later with Charles Lane and a couple of other people. I'll phone you at home around midnight and let you know one way or another. I'm pretty sure you'll be doing it. Probably up to Lane. I guess the union gets involved. I'll call you later, okay? Izzy didn't hesitate. I'll be waiting for your call. David walked away. Charles Lane was the acting director of the Pasadena Playhouse at this time. The founder and Playhouse director, Gilmore Brown, had been seriously ill for several weeks. Charles Lane had been in hundreds of movies and TV shows, and his face and voice would be familiar to any moviegoer. He was frequently a guest performer on television's I Love Lucy, and was seen in most of the Frank Capra-directed movies like You Can't Take It With You and It's a Wonderful Life. He specialized in portraying a sour puss. If the script called for a grumpy, sarcastic male character, Charles Lane was a perfect fit. He just looked the part with a natural scowl. Paul Price, after learning what David said, was apprehensively pleased. Well, the matinee's at 2:30 tomorrow. Doesn't leave much time for a rehearsal. I don't need a rehearsal. Izzy's answer was lightning quick and right to the point. I've done it in my mind 100 times. Price hid his facial response from Izzy. You'll find out at midnight. I guess we'll all be contacted. Izzy said goodnight, purposely avoided other cast members who went to his car and drove to his apartment. His wife had mixed emotions. She had no personal experience in the theater, but she could easily imagine the stress this would put on anybody, regardless of their preparation. At 6 minutes after midnight, the phone rang, and it was David. Izzy, they asked me to check with you one more time. Are you absolutely sure you can do the part? David, I know the part upside down, sideways, and inside out. I'm ready. I'll show them. Izzy could not have sounded more positive. David couldn't quite believe Izzy's words, but did. They want to have a technical run-through at 10:30 a.m., just to make sure you know all the cues for lighting, sound, and entries and exits. Please be on time. The full cast and technicians will be there. David felt like this was actually a dream. He didn't think it would come to this. Good luck, Izzy. I know you'll do a good job. But in the back of David's mind, he questioned how any actor could do it. Even Brando or Olivier. Thanks, David. See you later. When Izzy hung up, his wife knew what was coming next. She had pulled down the bed and had it ready. She knew he would mentally go through the play before going to sleep. She would sit in a stuffed armchair and try to take a nap in the meantime. Fortunately, she did not work on Saturdays. At 7 a.m., Izzy's phone rang. He was already awake and about to get up. It was Paul Price. He wanted Izzy to meet him and Walter Osman at the cafe around the corner on Colorado Boulevard from the Playhouse for breakfast at 9 a.m. before the tech rehearsal. Izzy wasn't crazy about the idea, but since Paul and Walter were part of the cast and also his classmates, he agreed. Izzy shaved and got ready. His wife wished him the best, and he left with time to spare. As the waitress took their order at a booth in the rear of the restaurant, Izzy could clearly see that Walter Altsman was nervous. Walter was the first to speak. Putting his palms down on the tabletop, Altsman looked grimly at Izzy. "You can't do this. It's impossible. You haven't rehearsed one time with the cast." Izzy was calm but firm. "Just shut your mouth, Walter, and watch me do it. Otherwise, I'll report you to the Gestapo." Paul Price was Jewish and laughed out loud. Walter did not laugh or even smile. Izzy continued, "Let's have a nice, peaceful breakfast. You guys should be on my side. I need good thoughts from you. What I have to do won't be easy, but I can do it. I know I can. But you need to root for me, not against me." "I'm sorry, Izzy." Walter sounded sincere. "I didn't mean it that way. It's just that it's difficult for me to believe you can do this. I want you to do it, but it seems impossible." "Well, neither of you know how much work I've put into this. Nobody does. Only me. Let's relax and have a good breakfast and go in there and let it happen. If I goof up, I goof up. But I don't think I will. I'm actually looking forward to it, if you can believe that. I've done the work, and I'm ready to prove it. Maybe it's an ego trip. I hope not. Admittedly, it has something to do with self-confidence, and that's a trait I'm not void of, and I don't think any actor should be." They had a relaxed, enjoyable meal, then went around the corner to the Playhouse for the tech rehearsal. It was flawless. The technicians, the cast, the director, and David were all relieved and impressed that Izzy knew his cues perfectly. Charles Lane wasn't there, but was expected at the 2:30 performance. Everyone was informed that Izzy would play the Haney part at the matinee. There wasn't much time left, but Izzy's apartment in South Pasadena was not far. He went home, told his wife the good news, and freshened up. Then off to the matinee performance, his first, as Michael Haney. He was feeling better and better by the minute. He'd worked his butt off for this, and now it was time to produce, to show his acting talent. This opportunity didn't come to many actors, and Isadore Reingold was well aware of this. When the curtain went up for the matinee performance, the actors who had scenes with the character Michael Haney were understandably on edge, especially the two other lead actors who played man and wife. Without any rehearsing, they would suddenly be facing, talking to, and touching a completely different person in front of several hundred paying customers. Just the thought of it would panic most any actor. And some of these actors who had become friends with the actor who no longer was a member of the cast resented what Izzy had done and was going to do. This was in the back of Izzy's mind when the play started. The first act was perfect, as was the second and final. It was an excellent performance in all respects. Izzy Reingold's portrayal was impeccable. The audience was extremely receptive. There were several curtain calls, the final one with the three main actors including Izzy. Backstage, the first person to approach Izzy was Donald Reingold, who designed the sets. Extending his right hand to shake his. "Izzy?" He looked directly into Izzy's eyes. "You were better than him. Congratulations and good luck." "Well, thank you, Don. I appreciate that." "Reingold!" Izzy heard his name called and thought he recognized the voice. He did. Turning around, Charles Lane was right in front of him. "Reingold, how in the hell did you do that? I've worked with Gable and Tracy and many others, and I've never seen anything like that in my life. How did you do it?" Lifting both palms upward. Izzy was stunned. He had seen this man with Gable and Tracy and many others as far back as he could remember. Charles Lane was the personification of the word movie, and he was now giving Izzy a supreme compliment. Izzy desperately searched for an answer. "I'd have to say the answer is work, Mr. Lane. I worked my tail off learning the part. I didn't want to disappoint you or myself." "Well, you sure as hell didn't disappoint anyone. You did a great job, and thank you." He turned and walked away. There were other congratulations, and there were some noticeably missing. The two most noticeable missing were from the two other main actors and a few of the major supporting actors. Izzy got the tacit message. He understood their feelings, but felt their judgment was unreasonable. He simply did the job he was asked to do, and did it well. But so did the Germans who put the Jews to death. Izzy, however, did not directly participate in the firing of the actor who played Haney. His participation was indirect. If Izzy had not been able to perform the role and told David when he asked, that actor would have performed it Saturday afternoon and everything else would have been the same. The show would go on for another 9 performances with Charlton Heston's acquaintance playing Michael Haney. He would have been scolded, but nothing more. Instead, he'll have a black mark on his record, and the last 10 performances of the play will have a young actor who recently graduated from the Playhouse in the Haney role. While removing his makeup, Izzy looked toward the door and saw his wife's smiling face. "Hey, what are you doing here, you little rascal?" Izzy was plainly surprised. "Paul and his friend brought me." She came over and gave him an affectionate hug. "Hey, you guys are sneaky. It's probably better that I didn't know." "We figured that," added Paul. "That's why we did it that way." With her hand on his shoulder, she looked down at her husband. "You were pretty good." "Pretty good," Paul chuckled. "Coming from her, that's better than what Charles Lane told me." Izzy was serious. "What did he tell you?" inquired Lily. "We'll talk about that later. Let me change so we can go. There's another performance tonight and I don't want to fall on my face." Saturday night was a full house with a very responsive audience, and Izzy did not fall on his face. On the contrary, he improved in several spots. He was getting the feel of it now. In one scene, Izzy's character enters through a door after having a bad night out. He's supposed to look dreadful, as if on the verge of throwing up. Backstage, as Izzy approached the door in character and about to open it, a student stagehand saw him and whispered fearfully, "You okay, Izzy?" Izzy waved him off, staying in character, then opened the door and entered on stage. His facial expression and body language must have been excellent. The audience burst into laughter. When the performance ended, David, the assistant director, told Izzy he was outstanding. Not to change a thing. Lily and Izzy both slept better that night than they had in a long time. Sunday morning, Izzy's top priority was to draft a letter he could send to 5 or 6 agents explaining what had happened and to please come and see his performance during the final 7 shows ending next Sunday night, and that he would make arrangements with the box office so that free tickets for them will be available. He would send a similar letter to Sale Baiano, director of casting at Warner Brothers. Approximately a year ago, Izzy and another student performed a scene from a student production in Baiano's office. The other student was up for a role in a planned movie at Warner's. After their presentation, Baiano thanked both students and then told Izzy he was a talented actor and asked him the name of his agent. Izzy was caught off guard and didn't have the presence of mind to ask Baiano for help in obtaining an agent. Instead, he told the casting director he had another semester left at the Playhouse and that after he graduated, he'd start looking for an agent. That basically was the end of the conversation and the end of Baiano's interest in Izzy. He would now draft a special letter to Baiano in which he would try to refresh the casting director's memory and invite him to see who was that lady, and strongly inform him that he is now ready to go to work and needed a job and also an agent. Lily had a portable typewriter on which she produced very professional letters and envelopes. Izzy took the letters to the Pasadena main post office so they would go out the first thing Monday morning. There was no Monday night performance, but Izzy rehearsed the play in his small apartment living room. He knew the next several days could be the most important in his life. And they would have been if Mr. Baiano or any of the agents had taken the time to drive from Hollywood, Beverly Hills area of Los Angeles to Pasadena and see Izzy's portrayal. But none did. Not a single one. Isadore Reingold performed his heart out during those final stagings. The director and his assistant David thanked Izzy for his work. There was no usual cast party at the end of the run. The dismissal of the actor who played Haney put a damper on that possibility. A decision was made to skip the cast party. Reingold was regarded by some cast members as a villain. If his part of an FBI man had been played by any other actor, the odds would be good that none of this would have happened. No doubt there would have been a festive cast party, and perhaps even Charlton Heston and his wife would have come to celebrate with their friend. It proves that sometimes conscientiousness by one can actually be detrimental to a group. Isadore Reingold would also go through the rest of his life wishing he had asked Charles Lane to help him get an agent. Zeniths are occasionally followed by blunders. As a footnote, Izzy was happy to learn that from 1960 to 1985, the actor whose place he took in the Michael Haney role was in more than 30 movies and television shows. His removal from the cast of Who Was That Lady in 1959 evidently had no adverse effect on his acting career. On the contrary, it was probably a great lesson for him. He died in 1991 at age 75. That's the end of the short story. I hope you read it and the rest of the book. Thanks for listening.